Hi, good morning everyone. This is meteorologist Melanie Layden, and it is 11 o'clock on Monday, and so it's time for our Weather School for Kids segment. This is something we do every weekday, Monday through Friday, here at the Forewarned Storm team, and we teach you a new lesson each day of something that has to do with the weather. And each day we do something different, a new topic for you and your kids at home to be able to just get a little weather knowledge going on. I know a lot of kids are out of school for coronavirus and we're getting into the summer, so we're looking for fun things to do for the kids and really for adults too. This is fun for all ages. And today's lesson is actually on the heat index. Excuse me. And I thought it'd be appropriate to start this today because we're starting to get into those warmer temperatures into the summer, and a lot of people have questions about what the heat index is, how we calculate it, what a dew point is, what relative humidity is, and I thought it would be great to go over that just so you get a little bit of knowledge and then you'll know what we're talking about too when we talk about it on the news. So thanks for tuning in everyone, and we'll get started. All right, like I mentioned, our Weather School for Kids segment is every Monday through Friday right here on the WSMV Facebook page, and it starts at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we have a new lesson for you each day. So thank you for tuning in to mine today on the heat index. So let's talk about what is the heat index. So basically what this is when you take your air temperature and the humidity in it, and it's actually kind of what we call that feels like temperature. The heat index is a combination of that air temperature and humidity that gives a description of how the temperature is actually feeling to you physically outside. It's not the actual air temperature that we're seeing. So a lot of people kind of get confused about that, thinking that the air temperature and the heat index are the same thing, when actually they're two completely different numbers. And how we measure that is through this kind of chart right here. This is from the National Weather Service, and it's the heat index chart. And we basically take the temperature and the dew point, and that's how we factor in the percentage of the relative humidity. It's actually the percent of how much moisture is there in the air. And this chart's pretty helpful because it's kind of divided up into basically the level of caution that you need to take outside. The yellow that you see is just, it's hot out there. You need to take caution, but you're still okay to be outside. The little bit more of a orangey color, that kind of gold color there in the middle, you want to use extreme caution when you're outside, but it's still okay to be outside for a limited amount of time. And then when you get into these orange and red colors, that's the danger zone. That's when you really want to stay inside, avoid outdoors if at all possible, because being outside for too long can really cause harm to you. So let's take a little sample of what I'm looking at here. So in the forecast for this week, we actually have temperatures in the 80s as we head into the weekend. 84 degrees here. So say our temperature is 84 degrees and our relative humidity is about, let's say 50%. As we look at the chart here, we look at 84 degrees and we look at 50% relative humidity, it's gonna feel like 85 outside. That's really not gonna make that much of a difference to what you're actually feeling. So yes, it's still hot. You probably just wanna be cautious as you head outside. Drink water, of course, but you don't need to do anything out of the normal to protect yourself overly if you're going to be outside, because really it's only going to feel 1 degree higher than it actually is outside. But say the temperature is 84 degrees and our relative humidity is at 75%. As we go over on the chart, it's going to feel like 92 degrees outside. That feels a lot hotter than 84. So that's when we actually get into that extreme caution zone. And it actually gets more dangerous the higher the actual air temperature is. So let's move on down here to say 94 degrees. We'll go 10 degrees higher. And we see that a lot here in Tennessee, especially in the summertime. So let's say it's 94 degrees outside and our relative humidity is 50%. Well, hey, look at that. It's going to feel like 103 degrees outside. And that's just a 50% relative humidity. That means there's more humidity the higher the temperature than a smaller temperature. So back here, remember, 50% at 84 degrees was only a degree higher. But as we go over here and get into 94 degrees, it's going to feel a lot hotter. And then let's say it's 94 degrees, and on that particular day, our relative humidity is 70%. Well, that's very high when we have a temperature that high. It's gonna feel like 119 degrees. So that's when you get into a situation where you really wanna avoid being outside at all, honestly, because if you stay outside for too long, when that feels like temperature is in the triple digits, that can cause harm to you. So this chart's pretty handy to have, and we look at it a lot. You can actually just find it on Google, and it's something we use a lot in the summertime particularly. Now, when we talk about relative humidity, there's really about 3 zones that we kind of divide these up into. The comfort range is where we really want to stay. We want to stay between 20 and 60% relative humidity. Now, remember what I just showed you on that chart at 50% relative humidity at 84 degrees? It was fine. We're still in that comfort range. However, when we get to a higher temperature, we're getting more on the uncomfortable range, that kind of very wet, sticky, humid area. So when we get to about 70% relative humidity to 100%, that's when it feels just doggone hot and humid and hazy and just horrible outside. So we don't want to be in this area in the summer, although it does happen a lot. Now back here is the uncomfortably dry area of relative humidity. And you'll see this in a lot of desert-like locations. Places like Phoenix, areas of New Mexico, even out in California, they get this a lot too, where that relative humidity is about 20% or lower. And that's what makes that dry air out there. If you've ever been to somewhere like Las Vegas in the summer, you've probably experienced that, and that's when it becomes very uncomfortable. On the opposite end, there's not much moisture in the air, and it's feeling very dry and kind of hard to breathe outside. So how we measure relative humidity is through the dew point, and I get asked this question a lot in the summertime. What the heck is a dew point, Melanie? Well, the dew point's really important to a meteorologist because that's how we factor how humid it's going to feel outside. You take your air temperature and your dew point temperature, and that's how you measure what it's going to feel like as far as that sticky and mugginess outside. And I think the magic number is 60 degrees. So what we have here is 56 to 60 degrees is still considered comfortable. So what we're looking at here is a chart. The higher the dew point goes, your comfort level really goes down. We're looking at a dew point, which we actually see a lot in the summertime in the 70s. That's when it's going to be uncomfortable to even oppressive. And anytime you're over 75, 76 degrees, it really just becomes downright miserable outside. That's when it feels very wet in the air, and that's when your hair starts to kind of frizz up as soon as you step outside, and it just feels really nasty. So the higher the dew point, the more humidity we have in the air. So when we have a high relative humidity or a high dew point, a lot of times we'll have a heat advisory issued, and there's 2 major at this point. And the heat advisory is actually when your heat index is greater than or equal to 105 degrees and less than 115 degrees. So what we're looking at for a heat advisory is that it means it's possible. It means that the air temperature and the dew point are going to be high enough to make it feel really hot outside, so you really just need to take precaution. It's the same thing as when we have, say, in severe weather, a tornado watch. It just means, hey, you need to be aware. You can still go outside, but you need to just really pay attention to the weather. Now, when you've got an excessive heat warning, these are pretty common, especially in the deep summer months, especially out west when things are really hot in the summertime. We get them here occasionally. We have a lot of heat advisories in the summer in Tennessee, but when we get excessive heat warnings, that means your heat index is over 115 degrees. So that's really dangerous. That means that when it's like that for more than 3 hours in the day and at least 2 consecutive days, that's when these are issued by the National Weather Service. So we pay attention to those a lot too. So here's a look at the heat index and the impact it will have on people. Now, if your heat index, your feels like temperature is about 80 to 89 degrees, you could probably get tired. Fatigue is definitely possible, but any higher than that, you actually run the risk of seeing things like a heat stroke, a sunstroke, heat exhaustion, heat cramps. Those are all very popular anytime it's between 90 to 104 degrees. But then when you get any higher than that, 105, which is when a heat advisory is issued, that's when it's very likely for you to get something like a sunstroke or heat exhaustion. And it's also very likely when your air temperature and your heat index become 130 degrees or over. So that's when it gets really dangerous, and you want to definitely avoid being outside. So take a look at this chart here. This is pretty interesting, the difference between heat exhaustion and a heat stroke. Now, we see this a lot in the summertime, especially for people who have outdoor jobs, things like lawn care, construction, any farmers see this a lot. Any kind of job that takes you outside in the summertime, it's really important to know the difference between these. They're both nothing to play around with, but heat exhaustion is very common. However, a heat stroke is something very dangerous. Now, you might be experiencing heat exhaustion if you feel faint or dizzy, excessive sweating from being outside. Actually, if your skin starts to feel pretty cool and pale or clammy, even though it's really hot outside, that's a sign of heat exhaustion. You might feel nauseous, and you might even throw up. That's a possibility. Your pulse being either very fast or very slow. And muscle cramps are also a really good indicator of heat exhaustion. So when you have heat exhaustion, if you feel any of these things from being outside, you immediately want to get into the AC. Get inside, get to a cooler place, find some shade if you're outside under a tree or a building, and drink water until you feel fine again. You want to drink a lot of water and stay very hydrated. Take a cold shower or a cold compress. That'll help you out. It's not to the point where it's super dangerous, but you want to treat it before it gets dangerous into this category of a heat stroke. And by that point, you're talking about a throbbing headache. You're actually to the point where you're not sweating anymore because your body is just going into shock. Your body temperature is going to be above 103 degrees, and your skin at that point becomes red, really hot, really dry. You still have got that nauseous feeling or even vomiting, but the only difference is your pulse here, instead of it being a possibility of it being weak, it's going to be really, really fast, and it's going to be really strong, and you can really lose consciousness too. So that's the point where you want to get to a situation to call 911. You really need help, and you need help fast, because that's when it can get really dangerous. So as far as heat safety tips go, pretty obvious. If you work on a job site, like I just mentioned, you want to stay hydrated, take breaks in the shade as much as you can. Check on your elderly, anyone who's sick, or especially without AC. It can get really dangerous in the summertime. And if you're outdoors, you want to limit your time outdoors. You want to find shade, stay hydrated. I know that sounds like common sense, but when you live your day-to-day life and you're outside and it gets really hot, a lot of times it's easy to forget that. And one of the things that we see the most working in the TV news industry is this one, in vehicles. Never leave kids or pets unattended. In a hot car, when you're enclosed like that, your car, even though the temperature outside may only be 89, 90 degrees, in a locked car, it can actually, within 15 minutes, get up to feeling over 100 degrees. And so that's very dangerous for children, obviously. And it's really sad how often that happens from people who just forget to look in the back seat. So now a lot of cars will become equipped with a safety feature that lets you know, it's measured by weight in the back seat if a child's back there. An alarm will go off before you lock your door. So that's really helpful and such a great safety feature for something like that. So those are a couple of safety tips for you. Excuse me. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I thought heat index would be a great one to do today because it's starting to get warm outside. And I get questions about this all the time about what is relative humidity, what is a dew point. So I hope you were able to learn something today from it. All of our Weather School for Kids are posted on our News 4 app. So if you've ever missed one and want to go back and see it again, you're more than welcome to find all of ours on there. The whole Forewarned Storm team is a part of this. Myself, Lisa Spencer, Dan Thomas, Cody Murphy, and Laura Bannon all do one, and they are every day, Monday through Friday, at 11 o'clock right here on our Facebook page, and we go live. So I hope you had a great time. Hope you're able to learn something new, and I hope you have a great start to your week. I am on TV today on News 4 at noon. I've got your latest weather, and we do have a warm-up on the way for us. Nothing like this that involves excessive heat, but I think you're going to like the warm-up that we see. We've also got rain on the way. I've been monitoring the radar here behind us with some rain already on it. So we'll be talking about that and your full 7-day forecast, so I hope you can tune in on News 4 at noon, and we'll see you then. Have a great day, everyone.